Hey everyone, in this video we're going to take a look at the user add command and we're going to take a look at some examples of adding users. So to start, we can run a command to check out our defaults. With an uppercase D, we get a list of how some of those defaults are set. So if we take a look at our Etsy default user add file, that is going to have some of these default settings. And the value set here for group is the GID value of the pre-existing group that users would be added to. If we specify a setting that assigns group users to a default group, the current settings are actually set so that we are creating a group named after the user, and then we're assigning the next available GID. And then of course, home, that's going to be the default value of home. Inactive is the number of days after password expiration until the account expires, set to -1, so that's not an effect. Expire would be the date that accounts would disable. And since that is empty, there is no setting there, so it's not applied. Shell is going to be the default shell that's applied, and then the shell directory, which is going to be some of our configuration files for a user, such as profile or bash rc and things like that. Create mail spool is set to no, so we're not going to create a mail spool for the user by default. And then we have the log init setting, and that's related to adding the user to the last log and fail log database. The log entries related to those items. We'll cover logging in another video, we won't get into detail on that. So let's go ahead and take a look at a quick example here. How we can use the same flag and we can make some changes to those defaults here. So as we demonstrated, by itself, we're just going to look at those settings, but with certain flags, we can make some changes. For example, -B, we can change the default home directory. And if we take a look at our changes here, see that our default home is now var. So let's go ahead and just change that back real quick. Double check to make sure that's set, and we're set back to home there. Okay, so now we're going to take a look at running the user add command to add a user. So in its basic form, we can do user add, and then depending on our default settings, by default, user add does not create a home directory. So if we include the -m flag, it's going to create a home directory. And we saw earlier that our default shell is sh, so the regular bourne shell. In this case, we want to make it bash, so s for our shell, and then /bin/bash. And we'll include the username. And with nothing else, that's going to create it according to all of our default settings along with these flags. And if we ID our user, we can see we got the next available UID, which is 1002. And then it created our group after our username and used the next available GID and added us to that group. And we can see that our home directory was created because of the -m flag. So there we go right there. And we can also take a look at the standard files we get from Etsy And there we are with our bash RC, our profile, and everything else that we usually get. This face and face icon is actually related to the profile picture that we see in the desktop environment. And if we check Etsy scale, we can see those are here as well. So this is a way that we can also add additional things aside from the standard bash profile and bash RC to every user that we create on the system. I'm going to grab a command here that we're going to run to check something else out related to user creation. And so Etsy logon.defs is another file that we have that also defines how our users and groups are created. So if we check this out, this is how our minimum and maximum GID and UIDs are defined. And then we also have this user groups enable set to yes. And that is related to our default naming a group after the username and then assigning the next available GID to that group. So let's go ahead and take another look at an example here. This one's a little long, so I'm going to grab this one instead of trying to type the whole thing. And this time what we're going to do is we're going to explicitly set the UID here with the -u flag. And then we're going to specify a primary group for the user instead of allowing it to create one named after the user. And this group has to exist in order for it to work. And then the -G, we can add supplementary groups at creation time. And check out our new user. And we have the UID we set. Our primary group was set to the demo group. And then we can see that we have our supplementary groups right here. But as we can see, without the -m flag, it didn't automatically create a home directory for us. And now we'll demonstrate creating a system user. A lot of the time you'll see these automatically created for you by the packages you install. Sometimes though, you may want to create them manually. Depending on the app you're trying to install, there may be instructions that lay out the specifics of how you need to create that account. And usually these accounts will specify a shell that doesn't allow interactive logon. So let's go ahead and check that out real quick. And the R flag specifies a system user, and then we're going to specify shell and our username. And so the no login doesn't allow the user to log in. That will return a message letting you know that the login is denied if you do try to log in. You also might see false here. And false is actually a built-in that returns a failure and basically always fails. It's kind of funny because the command description is do nothing unsuccessfully. So if you see that, the account will not be able to log in interactively. And we can also see those values in the login desk of how those are defined. So even though they're commented out here or appear to be, it still actually grabs a range within that 100 to 999 for the system users. And so now let's take a look at the passwd file or etc password. So this is what it looks like in whole. Let's just break that down to one entry to make it a little bit easier to see what's going on here. And so here, starting with the left, this field, we have the logon name. This field used to be the encrypted password. That's no longer stored in this file. It was moved into etc shadow. Prevent cracking, and that file is only readable by the super user. We have the user's UID, their primary group GID. This field is reserved for comments, which we have none entered here. This is the user's home, and then we have the shell. We can see the shells available on the system by checking the shells directory. And if we had something like Z shell installed, we would see that here. And so that's a quick overview of the password file. Now we're going to take a look at using userdel. And this command will delete a user. So if we delete our demo user, and now our user is removed from the system, but the home directory is still present. So by itself, the command will not remove the home directory. We have to include a flag to remove it. Otherwise, we'll have to remove it manually. And so if we want to clean that up automatically, we can use the R flag. And in this case, we actually didn't have a home directory for demo user 2, but it still tried to clean it up, and that also cleans up the mail spool file. We can also include a script in the login.defs file, and we could do something like create a compressed archive of a user's home and move it off somewhere automatically before we delete it from the system. Any other actions we want to take upon running userdel. Now we're going to take a look at another method we can use on the system to add and delete users. This is the add user del user command. This can be run interactively or it can be run with arguments on the command line. So if we want to add a new user, add user and then the username. And we enter our pass. And then in this case, these would be added to the comments field. Just leave them all blank. And we can confirm. And there we go. And so we don't have to pass anything at all the commands. It will prompt us for every detail we need to complete creating or deleting a user. So in this case, and we automatically remove the user's cron tab, but the user's home directory is automatically created as part of the add user command. And so we would have to manually clean that up unless we were specifying a different way to remove it, such as a script in login defs. We also have the new users command, and that can be used for creating new users in bulk or doing a bulk update of existing users. So let's go ahead and take a look at a file and the format it's in. There's some fields here we can ignore, but there are other fields that if we ignore them, there might be some issues. Like if we don't specify a home directory, then the user can't log in until it's created. If we don't specify a password, then the user cannot log in until someone sets the password. So there's a couple examples of some issues you might run into when you try to use that. And so if we go ahead and just run the command and target our file, and all these fields are specified in the man page. So we have the username, the password. Then here we have a couple other items such as their primary ID, their primary group ID, and then the comment. And so then the system will assign the IDs as defined by the defaults that are set. So let's go ahead and run this. And then let's go ahead and take a look at our passwd file. And now we can see our new users as they were defined. So let's go ahead and check out one of our new users here. You see we logged in successfully, but we didn't get a color prompt like our other user has. And that is because the new users command does not have a facility to add anything from Etsy So you're going to have to do that yourself with another script or using another method. So there we go. We don't see the usual bash profile or anything like that. So let's go ahead and log out. And let's do some cleanup. And there we go. Because we used the R flag with our userdel command, it cleaned up the home directories for us automatically. So there's another method we can use to create new users, directly editing the passwd file. Now we could technically use any text editor to do this, but there's no validation with that. And so we could have issues if we make a mistake in our editing. So there actually is a command where we can use it. It's vypw, and that will allow us to edit the system in a way where we can add a new user and perform a validation of the changes we made. And so I also want to mention, though, in case we make any changes, and so the system automatically creates a previous version of the file in the passwd file. So let's go ahead and check this out. And in this case, we'll go ahead and use. And then what we'll do here is create our user. So if we just follow all these fields, we'll leave our comment blank, set Pete's home. And real quick here, we're leaving X for the password because that's not set here. We have our UID, our GID, our comment, our home, and our default shell. And we'll set Pete's password. And there we go. So that covers most of the basics of creating local users. If you found this helpful, I'd appreciate if you'd like the video and subscribe to my channel, and leave a comment and let me know what other types of Linux content you'd like to see. Thanks for watching.